So thank you all, first of all, for joining us. We're excited to be able to meet with you today and get your input on what the field needs. The EdTech team consists of myself, Karina Kashor, Kenneth Kim, and Kyle Boyson, both of whom you'll hear from during this session. Like I said, we have a lot to cover and we're going to need your active participation, so let's jump right in. Next slide, please. So first off, some background information. Back one, please. So first off, some background information on what we are hoping to accomplish and why. The Arizona Department of Education developed a new vision in 2020, and that vision is equity for all students to achieve their full potential. And our EdTech unit aims to support that vision through our own vision, which you can see here is the EdTech team, guided by WIOA policy, engages teachers in relevant, inspiring, and research-based professional learning that leverages technology to better serve students. That brings us to our mission. With site visits put on hold and calendars full to the brim with meetings these days, it can be difficult for us to know what is relevant and inspiring for teachers in order for us to meet that vision. So to better serve you and your students, we'd like to create a community of practice to generate that two-way communication we are missing right now. I'll talk a bit more about the community of practice startup at the end of the session. And to kind of begin that two-way communication and ensure we're headed in the direction that meets your needs, I'm going to hand it over to Kenneth Kim to discuss the potential for a digital literacy framework.
Thank you very much, Karina. This is Kenneth Kim coming at you here from the Green Room, and I'm going to talk to you guys about digital literacy. So let's go and jump right into this. I want to specifically talk about how digital literacy is being used across the state and what that might look like moving forward. So I'd like to start off by taking a moment to take a baseline of where we are all at. First, if you wouldn't mind typing into the chat, what is one thing that you did in your classroom to support digital literacy with your students? Just toss that in there. Good thing is already scavenger hunt, discussion on digital footprint, integrating North Star, great. 2-hour workshops, introduce students to Blackboard, practice with the Zoom platform, very good. Completing things like Google Forms, North Star, logging into Google Classroom, breakouts, Canvas, very cool. Give you guys a couple more seconds here. North Star Digital, students and volunteers showing their screens. Let's see. A welcome video for teachers, good. Zoom meetings, and phone calls to help with Zoom and Canvas. All right. So while looking at the responses just kind of across the board, there's very clearly a branch of similarities that are occurring here. So despite the fact that every program is inherently unique and has the ability to address digital literacy on its own, there are clearly some similar veins that are occurring here. We can see that there's a lot of Zoom, there's a lot of the digital platform, there's a lot of training. And so this kind of begs the question of if there is more that we as a state can be doing to help solidify these similarities. And so I took some initiative and looked at some of the other states to see what they're doing and discovered something very, very interesting. And that is what Maryland is currently doing with their adult education groups. So Maryland has digital literacy framework. The digital literacy framework is developed by Maryland's adult education team. It is created via a task force that was created, it consisted of teachers, and the task force was designed to create the digital framework. And so the digital literacy framework was created by teachers specifically for teachers. And that includes some teachers that are even from out of state. I think they brought in some extra teachers from Florida, I think. Oh, excuse me. Some basics about this framework that I found were very interesting. The framework is broken into 7 major components. They're very explicitly not standards. And so rather than being standards, they're more guidance than standards. And they're guidance for instructors to use. They have a lot of guiding questions to check to see if what the topics are being addressed are being addressed in class. They cover the framework excuse me, the framework focuses on cross-content topics, so it's applicable for all content areas. It can be for an ELA class or for an ABE math class. Each of the framework also has each component listing different perspectives, the personal perspective, the educational academic perspective, and the professional perspective as well in the work environment. And last is the resources available. So attached, in addition to the digital literacy framework, there is also a large instructor's implementation guide that has a list of curated resources that are available, as well as lesson activities, which I'll get into in just a second. But first, let's take a look at the actual framework. So here are the 7 components that were addressed in Maryland's digital framework. The 7 components are first technical. So technical deals with physical navigation and operation of digital tools, structures, and conventions. So in essence, what it is, this is your basic understanding how to use a computer type of thing. It covers things like using an online kiosk at a doctor's office, navigating an LMS, which I saw a lot of you guys mentioning, that you have trainings for that, or filling out a time card for work. Next, we have Civic. So Civic is using digital tools. This deals with how students use their digital tools and making sure that they're using their tools in a safe, effective, and appropriate manner. Things like password and 2-factor authentication, using references to avoid accidental plagiarism, and securing personally identifiable information. All of these are things that would fall under this category of Civic. The third component is communicative. So this deals with sharing ideas clearly and effectively and creatively with different audiences to follow digital communication protocols, which is a really fancy way of saying basically how do students communicate with one another and with others online. And so think about posting on a forum, using a forum to gather information, posting comments on social media, or even composing an email that has professional language instead of the hey bro type of language that we occasionally get from students. The fourth component is collaborative, and this covers what the name implies, collaboration with digital tools. So this component definitely has seen a very sharp uptick in recent times, and it covers topics such as just how do you working together, complete like a project or a document, a class set of notes, things like that. The fifth component is computational thinking. And so this deals with problem solving with technology. So for example, analyzing literature, developing a personal budget, or scheduling an agenda for like a weekly meeting online. So doing these things in a digital setting is really what this kind of focuses on. And then focusing on using the critical thinking and problem skills that they've already developed in other parts of their education and using them in conjunction with technology. And so there's that focus of gathering data, analyzing that information, and then finding that solution. So next up is the investigative component, searching, identifying, and validating reliable and authentic digital resources. So this section deals with researching online, and usually we think about researching online as from an academic perspective. So reliable sources for an essay. However, they could also be trying to find a menu for an online restaurant that they like. You know, if there's a local restaurant that they're a fan of, trying to locate that menu to look up before they go. That requires this investigative skill, as well as looking for a new job on a job board, such as Indeed or Monster. Going through and investigating what jobs you're qualified for would fall under this category of investigative. And that's just another example of what I mean when there's different perspectives in this framework. So the seventh and final component is productive, which is creating content and products through the use of digital tools. So this deals with the actual creation of things using digital tools. This covers things like making a resume, a digital resume, making a digital presentation, or recording a video for social media, or recording a video or a GIF for a presentation. So I want to take a moment here and just say pause and check in with you guys. I know I just threw a lot for you. Looking at those components, which one resonates with you and what would you like more information on and why? So please type this into the chat and I'll take a look here. Collaborative, investigative, technical. Computational, couple collaboratives. Very good. Very, very neat. Okay, so we've got several investigatives that are popping up a lot. I'm seeing a lot of computational thinking, seeing a lot of collaborative, a couple investigates here and there. We got civic is one that seems to be lacking a little bit. Technical, not so much. But overall, some great feedback here. Technical, how do you teach how to use to somebody with no skills or confidence? That's a great question from Patsy there. Investigative, very cool, very good. So overall, these are some amazing responses and provides a lot of feedback to me as well. So I want to say, let's suppose you decide you want to use some of these components in your class, but you're not really sure where you can start. So sometimes when we look for things, it can be kind of a slog to try and dig up useful, appropriate resources for students that specifically pertain to digital literacy in the classroom. And so let's take a look at how this framework addresses that. So we enter the instructor implementation guide. So this is a supplementary document that is attached to the actual framework. And this is a compilation of activities and curated resources based on the 7 components and framework, or in the framework. It's very large. It's got 130 pages, and it's broken into 2 main parts, which is lesson activity, recommendations, and curated resources. The lesson activities usually focus on key content areas, and the curated resources focus on the 7 components. So let's take a look at that. So here's part 1 from the table of contents. You can see these are the lesson activities. And it focuses, you got your general, and then you have college and career, reading, math, social studies, writing, and language learning. So these are the specific content area focus activities. And then we have an example here of what a lesson activity might look like. We will go into more depth in one of these in just a moment here, but here's a quick snapshot. You can see that it has objectives, standards under associated materials, instructions, and of course, it has a little pie chart so you can see what's being used. For the second part, we have the component-based curated resources. Each section here has resources for a specific component. And so we have the general for all of them, and then technical, civic, communicative, collaborative, etc. Down the way for the curated resources. So here's an example of what that might look like for technical. Some links to various websites that are curated. Now, I want to point out that these links have been curated by some teacher that does teach adult education, and they've decided that this is worth having that addresses the specific component of the framework, and they've included it in the document. So let's take a moment to see how an instructor might use this resource. Here is Amy. We'll say she's an ABE instructor that wants to begin incorporating digital literacy more regularly into her classroom. So we're going to follow along and see how she is going to use this resource. So she's going to start by looking at the table of contents for the implementation guide, and notes that there are lesson activities for writing section, and it's on page 81. And so the document itself is a live PDF, so she could just click the 81, and it'll take her straight there. But in the lesson activities for writing, we have a good activity, collaborative problem solving with blogs. So you can see right away that it has some objectives, and here are the objectives here. We get a snapshot to see what the lesson is going to touch base on. So Amy can see that teamwork's going to be covered, problem solving, there's going to be discourse in the blog, identification of problems and solutions. Amy can also take a glance real quick and see that what components are going to be covered. And we can see that technical, communicative, and collaborative are all kind of pulled out from the pie chart. And those are the ones that are going to be addressed in this particular lesson. So underneath the objectives are competency and standards. And so this is obviously not Arizona standards because this is not designed for Arizona. These are going to be Maryland standards, but they do address, here's the competencies and standards for this lesson that are addressed. And of course, there's materials and resources that are recommended. So here we can see that the guide has provided web links to different sites for students to learn about blogging, in addition to recommendations for technical resources. There's even a YouTube video with a link that explains how to use a blog with multiple authors, and that's what that YouTube video link there is for. So in addition, there's the instructions, and it's broken into two sections, pre-teaching and the actual teaching. And so in the pre-teaching section, we're provided a brief overview of the steps needed to set this lesson up. Amy notes that there is an appreciation for the questions provided and guidance. She can think of a few things she would probably adjust and change for her particular classroom. We also have teaching. And so in the teaching instructions, this is guidance on the actual implementation of the lesson. And so Amy can read through this real quick and see that the different steps are reasonably written. She notes that learners are expected to discuss digital citizenship in relation to the blog. On the next page is the extension activities and key observation sections. Amy notes that this activity can be easily replaced for other topics or used as just kind of a continuous activity for like a portfolio assignment. Last is this important section here. So this is the distance learning tag under the key observations. So any activity tagged with this section will have information on how the lesson can be applied remotely. For examples, here Amy can read that some of the assignments might be handled asynchronously, and that smartphone connections between students can be used when a breakout is not possible due to limitations of whatever the platform Amy is using. If she doesn't have breakout capabilities or breakout permissions, then she can still do that connection via the smartphones. So hopefully our journey with Amy was somewhat beneficial in showing how an instructor might make use of this kind of content and how they might use it to benefit their students in their class. It's not really about things that are super groundbreaking, but rather it's about the implementation guide's name as being descriptive. It's a guide that helps instructors adapt content into a digital framework. And sometimes that brings new mechanics. And so to wrap my section up real quick, and actually potentially open up a discussion, is would you be interested in participating in the creation or the adoption of a similar framework in Arizona? Is this something that we need here in our state that we should focus on in this 2021 brand new year here that we would like to do? And would you like to participate in it as well? So a little bit two-ended question. So please tap it in, tap your keys to type a response into the chat, please. And if you can follow up, in addition to just saying, yes or no if you're interested, whether or not creation of our own seems plausible, or if the adoption of a different one that is already there is maybe the better option, what you would prefer. I'm seeing a lot of resounding yeses, which is great. Somebody screamed it from the rooftops. All caps, multiple exclamation marks.
So what's awesome is that, as Kenneth just pointed out, is there's a very overwhelmingly yes response. Is there anything in this Maryland framework that you feel is missing as far as topics, or is there anything that you feel wouldn't necessarily fit in for Arizona? So we see that there is a need for it. We want to make sure that we are able to cover everything that you feel is necessary as well.
So just to sum up, is there anything from what you guys just saw with the Maryland one, because we have an example, that you're like, this is something we specifically want for ours, or also that is not touched by the Maryland one that would be specific to Arizona that we want in our framework?
So I believe we were going to link it in the chat. Do you have those links available?
I do, because it is bookmarked, because it's a fantastic resource. Oops. I saw my lunchtime browsing here. Let me grab that real quick here. So this is the link for the framework itself. And this is a link to the instructor guide, implementation guide. There you guys go. So feel free to take a look at that and just take a peek at it whenever you feel need. I do recommend you bookmark it because it is quite awesome. Right. Is there any other what time frame are we looking at? That is an excellent question. We are just getting off the ground, so we'd have to do some more digging and investigating before we decide exactly how long this is going to take.
Yeah, and that also will depend on whether the Maryland framework we feel is good to go for Arizona as it is, or how much tweaking we need to do to it. So hopefully the goal would be latest next program year, so by June 30th, it's done, ready to roll out.
Are there any other comments or suggestions you guys would like to make for this section before we jump ahead? Do you have something to add? Please type it into the chat now. Do my little waiting dance. All right, I don't see anybody else typing anything in, which is fine. Thank you so much for this feedback. I want to point out that you guys' feedback is absolutely invaluable to us, and we'll have more of a chance to talk about this topic later. But first, yes, we would be aligning to our current curriculums as well. But first, I'd like to pass the mic over to Kyle. He's got some really interesting stuff he's going to want to talk to you about. So I'm actually going to stop sharing and he'll take over.
Hi there, everyone. This is Kyle Boyson, and I am taking over the screen right now. Okay, should be good to go. Okay, I know that lunches are setting in, and we might be losing some people to some post-lunch sleep here, so get your typing fingers ready and get your mics hot because we're going to be doing a little bit of discussion here on virtual learning course content. First, just a call back to the mission from the beginning, from the top of the session that Karina mentioned. One of our mission at the EdTech unit is to make a more effective two-way channel of communication between the local programs and the state office so that we can inform our decision making around professional development and guidance as well. And so with that in mind, the objectives for this session are to tap into our great resources of you all, the instructors and administrators, to share and discuss instructional practices and important tools for facilitating virtual learning, as well as piggybacking on those ideas to generate ideas for a self-paced virtual learning course that's to be designed by AES in the very near future. Just a little bit of background. About 13 years ago in 2019, at the end of the year, the EdTech team was having a conversation about the virtual learning pilot that two programs were participating in. And we came up with the idea of trying to create a baseline of best practices and tools that could be used to implement virtual learning. And then fast forward to March of 2020, and virtual instruction became ubiquitous, and it was just about overnight. So there was from zero with no preparation, everybody had to adjust. And looking into research, what was available on one of our favorite resources, the internet, the research was outdated. The research on virtual learning generally deals with demographics that fall outside of what the adult education community deals with. And so it wasn't that helpful to go looking for research. And instead, what we decided was that we needed to bring together effective strategies and tools that work in our context in the state of Arizona. And so we're tapping you all to help us do that, if you wouldn't mind. So today, shout out to Robin Mayer for her session prior to the lunch break on Google Jamboard. We were so inspired that we used Google Jamboard here to try to facilitate a discussion around these ideas to bring in your feedback. For those of you that haven't seen Google Jamboard or didn't attend Robin's session, it's basically virtual whiteboard, and that white space is collaborative. The whiteboard is collaborative, and students and teachers can work together to brainstorm out ideas, add sticky notes, add pie charts and drawings and links and images in what ultimately is a more flexible platform and flexible space than Google Docs or Google Sheets. So don't worry if you haven't used it before. It works pretty well right out of the box, which is sort of the point. And I will go through step by step what you will be doing in order to contribute to the discussion in just 1 second. So I originally had a slide with a GIF on it, and I'm going to skip it because I'm going to just show you what you'll be doing right after I read the instructions. So we'll be taking, for this discussion, for the first part, we'll be taking 10 minutes about to respond to some prompts around the ideas that I just went over, virtual instruction, virtual learning. And then after, we'll start with step 1. I'll include in chat here a link to the Jamboard, and now I lost my chat. Ken, do you have the link that you can include in chat while I talk?
Yeah, let me grab it.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. It's in the slide notes if you look in there. So Kenneth will post the link to the Google Jamboard in chat right now, and go ahead and open it so you're ready. After that, when you click the link to the Google Jamboard, you'll see on the first Jamboard there, on the slide 1, we'll call it, that there will be a prompt, and that prompt will should elicit some response from you about teaching and learning in the pandemic era. And you will go ahead and use the user interface to create a sticky note, type out your response, and then press save, and that sticky note will end up on the Jamboard so that you can have your thoughts right there alongside everyone else's thoughts. You will, after you've contributed your idea, there are 2 more prompts, so a total of 3 prompts. You will click this right arrow that, once again, I will show you shortly, and it will navigate to the second prompt. You'll create a sticky note. You'll leave your thoughts there, and then navigate forward to the third prompt and do the same. That'll take about 10 minutes, but we're going to play it by ear. And meanwhile, what I will be doing is doing my best to find common themes in the discussions so that we can pull out big ideas to inform our development of this self-paced virtual learning course. And then, like I mentioned at the top of this part of the session, prepare to share when the time is up. Get your mics ready. I may call your name. And now I will jump right into, I'll jump right into the Jamboard. So it looks like we have some people in here, 21 total viewers. This is my most popular document in my drive. The first Jamboard here with the prompt on it says, please think in the context of teaching and learning. You can see right here, there's a prompt in the middle of your screen that says, if I knew at the beginning of the pandemic what I know now, I would have. Once again, in the context of teaching and learning, please. And then you'll see on the left-hand side of your screen, there's a user interface with a panel of options. One of them looks like a sticky note. And if you click it, you can type your response right here. It'll go right in the dialog box. You can choose a color and press save. When you press save, you can make another sticky note if you'd like, or click away from that box, and then you can move your sticky note at will. And you can see that people are already adding their ideas. Please, if everybody could add an idea, and I don't want you to be concerned with repeating information. In fact, repeating information allows us to find themes and common struggles or common solutions to problems so that we can make sure that the course content we create is informed by your wisdom and experience. After you've included your comment here, you'll notice at the top there's a panel for navigation. And then the top middle, it says 1 of 3. That means there are 2 more frames. And you just jump over to frame 2. And frame 2 has another prompt, which is what are some tech tools and/or instructional strategies that have been effective for virtual learning? Which one would you pass on to a new teacher? Please go ahead and respond to that. Once again, repeat information is not a problem. And you're going to be doing the response with the sticky note, just like we did before. And finally, what skills does a new teacher need to teach in a virtual setting? There will be overlap of information. Go ahead and just type out your thoughts, please, on all 3 of these prompts. We will give 10 minutes or so, depending on where people are at. But if there are any questions, feel free to fire up your mic or type in the chat if you would like me to go over any of the navigation tips or how to get through this Jamboard. And then Kenneth, I lost my chat, so if you could inform me if there's anything in there.
I will let you know.
Thank you. And I'm going to go silent for a little bit and look over your comments. Thank you so much for your collaboration. We appreciate it.
As a quick reminder, at the top where it says 1/3, you can potentially move if you need to. I just say these are some great informational pieces here.
It's interesting. We have a lot of people driving straight towards digital literacy, but I see a lot of I wouldn't have stressed out as much or had more patience and things like that. I think that's perpetually important. So it's good to see that represented up here. And it looks like people have already moved on to slide 2, panel 2. There is no rush. We do have 10 minutes, so we're working on about 6 or 7 minutes left. But go ahead and take your time to make sure that you're able to express yourself on these prompts. I see a lot of tools on this slide, on the second slide, but just a reminder that some of this stuff is instructional strategies. So if there's anything in terms of routines, like methods that you use for exit tickets or things like that, please feel free to include that. I know that there are things that are found in every class, but looks like we're looking at tools specifically right now. So just to open that up a little bit. Okay, we've got just a few minutes left, and it looks like we're populating a lot of these slides. So just about 3 minutes, and then we'll go ahead and I'll force some people to come out and speak about their ideas, or volunteer you, I should say. As we're coming to a close here on this part of the discussion, I really want to thank everybody for their willingness to share their ideas. There's a ton of great stuff here, and we'll dig a little deeper into it right about now. Don't feel like you have to stop writing your ideas. I have some things that I typed out that I wanted to highlight, and if it relates to a particular sticky, then what I will ask is that that person expound a little bit more on the idea if possible, or at least read it out loud so that we can start a discussion. And once again, if you feel like you're not too shy to make your mic happen, then we would love to hear your voice. So at the beginning, I'm going to go back to this first prompt. If I knew at the beginning of the pandemic what I know now, I would have. And the first things I wrote down, and I mentioned this before, was about patience, where I wouldn't have stressed out so much. This is the first one that popped out. Can the person that write this explain a little bit more about the context for being patient and dealing with stress, if you wouldn't mind? Okay, so we found a shy one. I don't hear anybody right now. Does anybody that I see there are other stickies that had less stress to actually enjoy tech resources better? Can somebody share about that wrote that sticky?
One that kind of sticks out to me as well along that theme, Kyle, is this one that says, I would have had less uncertainty. And I wonder if that person would be willing to share what they mean by uncertainty.
Yeah, I was the one who put the less uncertainty. Well, just because when it started back in March, I had no idea, is this going to be going on for a couple weeks or, a month that it ended up we were virtual, since then. So it's been almost a year now, but it wasn't decided, all at one time that, okay, we're going to be virtual for a year. It was decided in blocks of time, like, okay, we're going to reconvene in a month, we're going to reconvene in another month. So there was that uncertainty for the teachers, but for the students as well, of like, how invested do we need to get into getting this virtual stuff, if it's just going to be, a short turnaround, or if we're going to go back to in person fairly shortly. So if we knew this ahead of time, we could have planned better.
And that makes me think a little bit. Brandon, thank you for jumping in there. And that makes me think of Kate's session a little bit about using virtual resources, particularly a learning management system, to set up a class that is flexible for face-to-face as well as virtual instruction, so that it's not like we're doing this for a little bit and we're going to go back. It's building both of those things together so that they're flexible. So I think that having the certainty that this was going to last a long time, or that there was an avenue that wouldn't be a temporary avenue, definitely would have provided some security, some certainty. The other thing I saw on this slide, and we want to jump to the next one pretty soon, was explicit instruction in digital literacy. And I think that came up. I see upskilling students to use collaborative virtual meeting spaces. So if that person wants to chime in, and then also had digital literacy training as part of the curriculum, those are definitely important pieces related to explicit instruction of digital literacy. Do you all want to chime in?
I can chime in, especially for in-person before the pandemic. You know, sometimes you'd go to the computer lab or something and it was just a lot of work to like log in or get the students or help them. And so sometimes you get this feeling of, if I focus on the instruction piece and not the literacy or the digital literacy piece, I can accomplish a lot more. But then we're kind of forced into this pandemic and everyone's online and everyone learned it and figured it out. And so just if you'd had the faith to actually like work with students and help them on the computer, and I think we all wish we could be face to face with students helping them learn technology right now instead of trying to do it digitally. So just the importance of it may take a little longer and have some growing pains, but it's so important, and it's a skill that provides so many more avenues once you have it. So and kind of going along with what the other guy just said, like you could have had more online practice while we were face to face. So having more homework assignments online and sending students home to practice more and everything. So I just think our students can do a lot more than we realized in helping them along the way with that.
Absolutely. I mean, it's definitely a silver lining, right, from all of the other things that are happening in the world, seeing how flexible and how adaptable everybody's been. And I noticed, Elizabeth, that Rio, that you all had started to create classes with specific idea of focusing on digital literacy. Is that correct?
Yeah, we did move to Canvas, and so everything's on Canvas now. And I know we have kind of visions of doing that, but we do also have like tutoring sessions and things like that to help students out. And we made digital literacy part of our orientation, so that way when students got in, they got it right away for both our GED and our ELA.
Yeah, I think that including in the orientation is a really key step to kind of setting the standard, especially now that we have a clearer picture of the necessary tools that students will need, and those are more defined, as well as like what we're capable of as teachers. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm going to jump ahead to the next prompt here so that we respect time here. We've got about 16 minutes left. And this, like I said, when we were doing it, it focused a lot on tools used for tech tools used for facilitating virtual learning. And what I saw was a common theme here was to kind of piggyback on the explicit digital literacy instruction, was using Zoom and using collaboration platforms like Zoom and Google Meet and things like that, and using the features of them like breakout rooms, not only on the instructor side, but teaching them to students as well. And I think this is where I saw it. Teaching students how to share their screens was a game changer. Does that person want to chime in and expound on that a little bit?
Yeah, this is Jana. That was mine. We developed these workshops as part of our orientation because Blackboard is so particular and so unlike all of the other LMSs. It's not user-friendly, but it's loaded with features. And this was the one thing that everyone, teachers and students, came back and said, absolute game changer. Gotta know how to share my screen.
And what from the student side, what was it receiving help and sharing the screen allowed the teachers to clue into what they needed to help students on, or do you know in particular?
So we walked them through, we created videos, we showed them the videos, and then we took the time to make sure everyone was able to share their screen before we moved on to the next subject. And then we rolled that in later in the workshops. So everyone had multiple opportunities to share their screen. So now when they're in the classroom, the teacher is like, oh, you're having a problem? Share your screen with me. and the teacher can see exactly where the
Oh, that's
student
awesome.
is. Like if they go out, because the students couldn't even navigate between tabs. They would go out to GED Academy and then not be able to find their way back to our Blackboard class. So I think we didn't quite realize the extent of their reliance on cell phones and inability to do some basic copy and paste and navigating that we kind of took for granted. But yeah, like I can't log into GED Academy. Well, share your screen and let me see what you're doing. And then the teacher can see, oh, you left out the @ sign, or whatever it is. You're on the wrong host site.
That's awesome. It's almost like teaching somebody to speak in digital. Like you have to start with like if you can show me what you're thinking or what's happening there, then we can work. Otherwise, we're kind of it's a
Because
non-starter.
we've all had those conversations. Well, no, go up. No, go up.
Yeah.
Where are you? What are you looking at?
I have that conversation with myself a lot. What are you doing? Okay. Thank you so much for sharing. The other things that I saw here were use of a learning management system, and I know this has kind of been a theme, and Jenna, you mentioned it. I saw Google Apply Digital Skills, either one of those, if anybody wants to chime in. I think that those are both interesting avenues.
Hi, Kyle. This is Rachel. I'm the one who wrote the Applied Digital Skills.
Hi there.
Yeah, I just so appreciate Google because Google's products are free, and so many of us are using either Google's products or Microsoft's products, which are very similar. So students are going to use those, at their or in their classes as well as in their lives from here on out. And I think that anything that we can teach them that they're going to continue using and practicing on a regular basis is going to be especially important.
Yeah, and I think that there's just like a bevy of different options, and everybody's kind of in different, comfortable with different suites of software and different platforms. I think putting those, having it all under one umbrella like Google does is really helpful for focusing efforts in what Jenna was saying about like teaching and learning towards this specific software suite and not having it be like an amalgamation of different pieces. So I think that's really helpful to try to get on the same track with that.
Definitely. And just one final thing, Google's Applied Digital Skills has teacher lesson plans for all of those lessons. So instructors can go in and look at keywords. It gives you a script if you're teaching it. So it's all in there for instructors. And I just find it so helpful.
That's awesome. Yeah, the more work that's done for us, the better. I think that's a good starting point. Thank you for sharing. I will jump to this last section here to wrap up this conversation. We just have a few more minutes. Some ideas that I wrote down while you all were working is new skills that teachers would need. And once again, patience and persistence made an appearance here, which is really good and important to remember. And this one actually, where is it? The ability to laugh at oneself, willingness to accept change daily, skills at building a safe learning atmosphere virtually. And this is kind of a callback to what Joey was saying earlier when he made a mistake in that session, in that opening session, laughed it off and said that it was a good model, it was a good example. And I think that kind of like fluid and kind of like that fluid interaction and sense of humor about making mistakes and talking through them is really important as a modeling strategy. Does that person that wrote that want to chime in?
I can chime in there since I wrote that.
Thank you.
I'm still learning on how to laugh at myself. I'm a person that is usually a quick learner and wants to get it right the first time. So it is the tech realm has progressed so quickly, and that it's hard to keep on top of everything that's there, and then knowing how to narrow it down and what we need to use as a program. And so that's the part of accepting changes that happen minute by minute. Whether you're in the presentation mode, like earlier today, and like, oh, I didn't know that, and I didn't know that happened, and the ability to laugh and move on, but also that idea of modeling that safe learning environment so that students can make those same mistakes or totally different ones, but not to be able to be so discouraged that they don't want to do the class anymore because technology is standing in the way, instead of technology being the vehicle to help build that safe environment.
Yeah, I don't think that we can emphasize enough how important it is to model those kinds of things, even as something as simple as searching. I feel like we all are pretty proficient at finding what we need through Google when we jump in there, but identifying keywords and talking through the process of how you build even a search query, I think is like, to go all the way down to the basics, something that needs to be walked through sometimes. And so as a teacher, if you're doing it and you're on the Zoom session, you may as well talk through it as like a learning opportunity that happens right in the moment. So thank you very much for sharing. I try to laugh at myself as much as possible. What else did we see here? I saw a growth mindset pop up. And if I know that's kind of been a theme, and that was a book that Joey linked to there at the beginning. But if anybody wants to comment on growth mindset, I think that's a great piece to talk about.
This is Jana from CAC. Thanks, Jody. I think that was mine again. I said a growth mindset, a willingness to take risks, and patience. Because that willingness to take risks goes right along with a growth mindset. That you have to be somewhat of a risk taker and be confident that you can learn this. And it puts us in a different relationship maybe with our students, because some of us are used to like being very polished. Okay, not me, but some of you all are used to being very polished and like very knowledgeable. And it's not like this anymore. Like I put in the chat, this tool looks different than it did the last time I was in here. So we're all having to just learn on the fly. And I think those two things go hand in hand. And it's a good model for the students to say, we're always learning.
And I think one of the things that helps me is, it's easy to say, be willing to take risks and have patience and be ready for change and things like that. But to have work that's as ubiquitous as Carol Dweck's work with growth mindset, and like some sort of framework or something to back those things up, or even provide to students or instructors in some form or the other, is helpful for reinforcing those ideas. It's not just something I'm saying, it's something that's been researched, it's something that's been written about.
Right, this is the real deal.
This is real, I swear. It's not just me
science.
saying it. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Oh, that was awesome. I'm really happy that you all were willing to share your ideas and discuss them and let us put you on the spot. So what we're going to be doing is that these themes and these things that were shared out are going to be synthesized into, let me flip through these slides, sorry. We're going to be synthesized into a self-paced virtual learning course that provides kind of a baseline for, and it's going to start at the beginning. It provides a baseline for...
Hold shift and then push F5.
Okay. Are we there? Okay. We found it.
There's
like Joey said earlier, there are 10 to 15 ways to do every single thing with technology. Anyway, the self-paced course would be kind of a baseline or a starting point that highlights best practices and also the tools that teachers are using within the state of Arizona to address the demographics that we work with. And in order to facilitate that mission of a two-way channel of communication with you all, between you all and the state office, this is a kind of our first step that we're taking to make sure that your expertise and your wisdom is included in the professional development that we provide, to make sure that we are aligned in our practice. So thank you so much again for sharing out, and we'll go on, and I will pass the baton back to Karina.
Thank you so much, Kyle and Kenneth, for your presentations. We could go to the next slide. Just so you know, this is the type of valuable input that we're looking to get more regularly from you all through the community of practice that I mentioned at the beginning. I saw, Jana, that you noted in Joey's session and then earlier in Kenneth's portion of this presentation that we are all reinventing the same wheel. So our hope too is that this community of practice is not just for us to know what you all need, but also could serve to see what other programs are doing well, so that you at your own program could also implement it, and you're not reinventing the same wheel. Hopefully you all agree that a community of practice would be valuable for our adult ed community. We're still working out some of the details and of what that will look like and the platform it will be hosted on. Most likely though, it will be mainly asynchronous with optional monthly synchronous discussions. We will send more information on the community of practice details via email in the next couple of weeks. And please note that our goal is to have at least one active member per program and site participate. So please start beginning to think about who that might be at your site or program. Of course, more than one person is welcome, but we're hoping to have at least one. So before we go, please be sure to complete the survey linked in the chat. It has some unique questions for this session that we'd like you to address that aren't asked in the other session surveys. So we'd appreciate your feedback there. And then next slide, please. And again, thank you so much for your input. You all are the boots on the ground, so we definitely love hearing from you. And we hope that we are able to support you better and better as we move along. We look forward to working more closely with you, and we'll see you in the closing session. We got one more to go, so hang in there, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.